You don't shut down in conflict because you don't care. You shut down because your nervous system learned as a child that conflict for you means danger. So freezing isn't avoidance, which you might get accused of. It's actually survival. So let's start with the moment that you shut down. Picture the last fight you had, the last time your partner or best friend or whoever it was, and the conflict started. Or even maybe it was a tense conversation, and suddenly, what happens? Your mind goes blank. Your chest starts to tighten, your throat kind of closes. Maybe you start to lose words. You can't think, you can't express, you just kind of sort of check out. Maybe you feel blank, numb, distant, foggy, frozen. Maybe you can't even start to lose feeling in your fingers and toes. You just feel gone. And your partner is thinking, you don't care. You're just avoiding me. You're constantly stonewalling me. Or maybe they think you're being passive aggressive or just shutting them out. But the truth is, for people that are experiencing this, you're not shutting them out. You're shutting out the danger that's stored in your nervous system from the past, from the emotional blueprint you learned in childhood. So the truth is, you're actually just protecting yourself. And you've been doing that since childhood, because this is actually a survival response. Your brain and your body learned as a child, it's not safe. So when you saw conflict happen in your childhood, you didn't have the emotional tools to process it. So you only had basically one question. What in this moment is going to keep me safe right now? If you saw conflict, like yelling or unpredictable reactions or shame or maybe humiliation between parents towards you, maybe you saw them ignore each other or ignore you, maybe there was punishment, maybe you or one of your parents were constantly being told that they were wrong or too sensitive or constantly blamed, or maybe you felt or you saw somebody else being emotionally unprotected. Whatever it was, in those moments, your nervous system created basically a survival plan. And now you have to remember, each of us go through things like this in childhood, and each child develops their own unique coping skill. Well, this just happens to be yours. For instance, some kids do the opposite. They fight. Some kids run. They just get the hell out of there. Some fawn and collapse, and others freeze. Well, you froze. Now why? Why did you freeze? Well, because it worked. I mean, think about it. Go back to those painful moments. Did it keep things from escalating? Say the conflict? Did it keep it so that you weren't seen? So the conflict went right past you? Maybe you stopped being the targeted one. Maybe it helped so you stopped being criticized or stopped getting punished, or maybe you no longer got yelled at or shamed. So basically, you learned the most important emotional rule of your childhood is silence keeps me safe. That's the emotional blueprint that's running in your adult life. And it's basic neuroscience. See, when our body senses emotional threat, your sympathetic nervous system activates. Your heart rate spikes up, your amygdala sounds basically an alarm, and your brain shuts off the blood to the front part. But if the alarm becomes so big or triggers so often that it becomes overwhelmed, your nervous system hits what's called the dorsal vagal brake. This is basically your body's last resort. It's last survival response. It's the biological equivalent of be still, disappear, shut everything down. Think of a deer, like a deer in headlights. That's you. And that's your vagal nerve response. So what you call, or somebody else is accusing you of shutting down, is actually reduced blood flow to the brain. It's the collapse of your prefrontal cortex, the disengagement of your emotional centers, your amygdala and everything. And remember, every thought and every action we take starts with an emotion. This is why trying to think your way out of a problem won't work. You have to heal the underlying emotional programs that create the thoughts or lack of thoughts. In this case, for you, someone who freezes. And so when these moments happen, it's the shutting off of your higher reasoning, of that transfer of the emotion into your intellect. And for many people, this just leads to basically dissociation or numbness or freezing. It's not a dysfunction, it's really just somebody who's protecting themselves. So you're not avoiding the argument, you're avoiding the emotional memory underneath it. You shut down in conflict for one main reason. Shame. See, the shame you experienced in childhood in those moments I mentioned earlier, the emotional blueprint that got developed for you as a child, that shame, which is unhealed emotional pain. You can call it trauma because any negative emotional event in childhood is traumatic, and here's the proof. Most likely, I bet, you're a person who says your childhood was great. And this is why we have a distorted view of childhood trauma. Just witnessing these things can have this impact. And so, you develop the worst day cycle, trauma, fear, shame, and denial. You're stuck in the shame portion, and the shame has hijacked your nervous system. Now, it's not the shame that you get from doing something wrong, but the shame formed in that childhood emotional blueprint when you learn things like, my feelings cause problems in this family, or my emotions are too much, or if I'm seen, I'm a problem, or if I speak up, I'll be attacked or ignored. Maybe it was that if you express yourself, you'll be punished, or maybe if you disagree, you'll lose somebody's love in the family. So basically, when your shame gets triggered, your voice disappears. Your truth, just like the deer in the headlights, everything freezes. Nothing's gonna work. Voice goes away. Your truth goes silent. Your needs collapse. Your adult self goes offline. I don't care what your age is, you are now probably between the ages of 2 and 10 in these moments, okay? That's not to disparage you, it's to bring you into reality, to bring you into truth of what's happening to you so you can solve this problem, okay? So your childhood wound comes online, and you're shutting down not because you're just being stubborn, like I can hear some partners like, come on, just get it out, as though you're holding it back on purpose. Well, you're shutting down because your childhood self believes that silence is the only option to keep you safe. It's a survival response. But in this case, unfortunately, your partner interprets your freeze response as most likely probably rejection, or that you're emotionally withdrawing from them. Maybe that you don't care about them, or you're putting them off or stonewalling them. Maybe they just think you're avoiding them. But what they don't recognize, but you, well, it depends on the person. Some people won't even recognize this. Some are still attached enough that they might be able to feel these things, but a sense of being flooded or overwhelmed or completely dysregulated, maybe even terrified. For some, a deep sense of shame, just totally ashamed. What I'm trying to get across to you is that it's not that you're purposely disengaging. You're basically over-engaged. It's the opposite of what you think. You are so engaged and so overwhelmed emotionally that you actually collapse. So your shutdown is really a childhood trauma response. It's a product of your worst day cycle and the unhealed emotional blueprint that was downloaded into you as a child. It's not a character flaw. It's just very simply your brain protecting a wound that your partner can't see. What I'd like you to understand is that when you shut down during conflict, your adult self disappears and your unhealed, wounded child blueprint steps forward. That child still believes, if I stay quiet, I'll be safe. Or if I shut down, no one will hurt me. Or if I go still, I won't make it worse. So your child self is running your relationship. Your adult in these moments has literally no access to clarity, words, calm, truth, any type of communication in most cases, having any boundaries. You can't really even communicate from your adult self. So when your childhood self is holding the microphone, the question becomes, how do you get the adult to do that, to start speaking again? Well, it comes through the authentic self cycle, which contains 4 things: truth, responsibility, healing, and forgiveness. The first step is truth. We have to identify the childhood moment and moments where your childhood shutdown was born. You do that in 3 simple steps. What am I feeling? Where in my body do I feel it? And what's my first memory? And you're going to track it all the way back. Every time you've had that feeling, you're going to see the first time you learned that feeling was childhood. But you're going to see you've been experiencing that shutdown for years, and that shows the worst day cycle that you're stuck in. And it's all, the shutdown is all from this original childhood wound. This is your emotional blueprint you're stuck in. This is the moment your nervous system learned that your voice is dangerous. So it's the emotional origin of every shutdown you've ever had. So once you get into truth that the pain from the past is running our life, not to blame anybody, but to get into truth so we can get into step 2, take responsibility. And responsibility is about understanding that your shutdown is a survival strategy. It's not who you are. It's a false persona, and that's what shame is. It's an adapted self meant to protect your authentic self, which is hiding underneath it. And then we go into denial to protect ourselves, to protect that underlying authentic self. So shame, the false persona of shame, is running your life, all right? The shame side, because it goes into the next stage of the worst day cycle, denial, it doesn't recognize what it's doing. It's not consciously aware of its behavior, but it's critical you get the message down to your authentic self that you're not avoiding, you're protecting, that your brain is actually brilliant. It's just outdated, and it needs some work. It needs a new upload of software, is a good way of saying it. And we do that by step 3 of the authentic self cycle, healing. This is where we learn to rewire our nervous system through the emotional authenticity method. Everyone's familiar with emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is like getting through kindergarten or first grade of emotional understanding. Emotional authenticity is like getting your PhD, doctorate, and master's in your emotional development and emotional intelligence. All right, that's the difference, and that's what you need. Emotional intelligence will not solve this problem for you, because emotional intelligence deals with the present day. Its whole platform is about how to react in the moment. Well, I've just shown you, you're reacting from the past. Emotional intelligence doesn't have an answer for you on that. Only emotional authenticity does, okay? So with emotional authenticity, you learn how to feel without collapsing. You rebuild your emotional capacity. It teaches you how to process that childhood fear and shame that's lying underneath and running the show. The lack of show in this case, because you're not speaking, you're just frozen. But it breaks that emotional blueprint and the emotional chemical addiction to freeze. So you can reconnect to your adult self and to your, basically your authentic self, emotional truth, all right? So you learn the emotional presence during the conflict. In that moment, by learning the emotional authenticity skills, you'll be able to reclaim your voice, and then in the process, through repetition, rewire your brain to stay online when you're triggered. And when you do that, what really leads to this 4th step is by making a commitment to the first 3: truth, responsibility, and healing. When we become the authors of our life story instead of the victim of our past, we develop stage 4, forgiveness. When we do that, we can release the shame from our past. In other words, we can forgive ourselves that we did the best we could even when we froze, that we're not bad, that at every moment, no matter what we're doing or not doing, we are always inherently valuable and worthy. That's what you get by developing the authentic self cycle through emotional authenticity. That's what returns to you. So you're not in the shutdown. This is critical for you to know. You as a person are not the shutdown. That's a false adapted self. Your authentic self, who you really are, is the person underneath the pain, underneath the shame that's causing the shutdown. That's who you are. That's your authentic self. So if you'd like my help reclaiming that person that's still there, you'll never lose it. You just have to get into truth, responsibility, healing, and forgiveness. And if you'd like my help learning how to do that, you can use the link below.